Streets are filled with anger. Thousands of Filipinos are marching, their voices rising against corruption and broken promises. This isn't just about politics, it's about survival. The nation is drowning, not just in floodwaters, but in allegations of graft and betrayal. Today, we uncover the story behind the protests shaking the Philippines and why millions believe their leaders have failed them in their darkest hour. When record-breaking rains submerged entire cities, the Philippines was thrown into chaos. Homes, schools, and livelihoods disappeared underwater. But what truly ignited nationwide anger wasn't just the disaster. It was the belief that much of this suffering could have been prevented. For decades, Filipinos have lived with the constant threat of floods. The country sits in a typhoon belt, making it one of the most disaster-prone nations in the world. But locals ask, why are we still so unprepared? The government had allocated billions for flood control systems, drainage improvements, and emergency response. Yet when the floods came, entire regions had no working pumps, no functioning barriers, and no proper rescue systems. People started asking, where is the money? As investigations began, whistleblowers revealed shocking claims. Overpriced flood projects, ghost contractors, and funds allegedly pocketed by officials. To the public, this wasn't just negligence. It was corruption, plain and simple. It started with small demonstrations in Manila. Families carrying placards demanding accountability. Students chanting for justice. But soon the protests spread like wildfire, Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, Baguio. The entire nation was on its feet. One mother stands in front of the cameras, clutching her child. We lost everything. And they tell us the money for flood control is gone? Who stole her safety? Her words echoed across the nation, fueling the rage. This isn't the first time Filipinos have heard this story. From road projects to bridges, corruption in infrastructure has long been a cancer. But this time, the cost wasn't just wasted money. It was thousands of lives destroyed. Officials held press conferences, promising investigations. Some blamed contractors. Others blamed past administrations. But for the protesters, these were just excuses. They wanted action, not finger-pointing. In the age of smartphones, videos of flooded villages and crying families spread instantly online. Hashtags demanding accountability went viral. TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter became digital battlegrounds, uniting voices across the archipelago. Universities became hotbeds of resistance. Student groups organized rallies, teach-ins, and solidarity movements. Many compared the movement to historic protests that shaped the nation's past. Soon, it wasn't just students. Labor unions, jeepney drivers, farmers, all groups who felt abandoned by the system, joined the call for justice. The protests transformed from anger over floods into a larger fight against corruption. Global news outlets began covering the story, showing the world not only the floods but the fiery protests sweeping the Philippines. Suddenly, the government was under international pressure. Surprisingly, even some business groups voiced concern. Flood damage meant billions lost in infrastructure and trade. For them, corruption wasn't just a moral issue, it was bad economics. Investigators started using the term flood mafia, a network of politicians, contractors, and middlemen allegedly profiting from disaster funds. The phrase caught fire in the media, turning outrage into a symbol of betrayal. The chants grew louder. Resign, resign. High-ranking officials were named and shamed. Protest leaders demanded that those accused of graft step down immediately. While many joined the protests, others worried that political instability could worsen the situation. Some argued that reform should come through legal processes, not street action. The nation was split, but the anger remained. Many Filipinos recalled the People Power Revolution of 1986, when citizens flooded the streets to overthrow dictatorship. Could this new wave of protests lead to another turning point in history? Religious leaders began issuing statements, calling for honesty, compassion, and accountability. In a deeply Catholic country, their words carried heavy weight. Half the Philippine population is under 25. Young voices, amplified by social media, became the heart of the movement. Their demand was simple. We want a future free from corruption. Beyond politics, the floods left scars. Children missing school, farmers losing crops, families living in evacuation centers. Protesters argued, this is why graft is not victimless. It destroys futures. As rallies grew larger, tensions rose. In some cities, clashes erupted between police and demonstrators. Tear gas and arrests only fueled more outrage. Musicians, actors, and influencers used their platforms to spread awareness. Concerts for flood victims doubled as protest stages, giving the movement even greater reach. Activists demanded full audits of flood control budgets, public disclosure of contracts, and an independent watchdog to monitor projects. Protest leaders reported harassment, surveillance, and even threats. Critics accused the administration of trying to silence dissent instead of fixing the problem. Weeks passed, but the protests did not fade. In fact, they grew bigger. Organizers planned national strikes and boycotts, determined to make their voices impossible to ignore. Filipino communities abroad staged their own rallies, from Los Angeles to Dubai. The diaspora raised funds for flood victims while demanding accountability back home. Public interest lawyers began filing lawsuits, demanding criminal charges against those implicated. The battle was no longer just on the streets. It was entering the legal arena. As scandals deepened, critics questioned whether the current leadership could still govern effectively. Talk of cabinet reshuffles, resignations, and even impeachment began circulating. This is not just about floods. It's about trust in democracy, the rule of law, and the right of every Filipino to live in safety. The protests are a test of whether corruption will remain untouchable or finally be confronted. As the protests grew, some high-ranking officials went into hiding, avoiding the media. Their silence spoke volumes. For many Filipinos, this confirmed guilt more than innocence. Former government employees began leaking documents, signed contracts, inflated budgets, and suspicious payments. Each revelation fueled the fire, proving that the allegations weren't just rumors. Local journalists risked threats and intimidation to cover the scandal. Independent outlets live-streamed protests, interviewed survivors, and exposed shady deals. They became the voice of truth when state media stayed quiet. Rumors spread of lawmakers preparing to break from the ruling coalition. Some politicians, sensing the growing anger, distanced themselves from the administration to save their careers. Investors grew uneasy. The peso slipped. Tourism declined as images of protests filled global headlines. What started as a corruption scandal was now threatening the Philippine economy. Allies of the Philippines issued cautious statements, urging accountability and stability. Aid organizations questioned whether future disaster funds could be trusted under current leadership. At first, the rallies focused on flood graft, but as weeks passed, demands broadened. Reforms in healthcare, education, and food security. The protests became a wider cry for justice across society. High school and university students began striking from classes. They organized relief drives for flood victims while protesting corruption. For many, this was their first taste of political activism, and they embraced it fully. Officials tried to paint the protesters as agitators or destabilizers. State-run media showed smaller crowds, downplayed the anger, and insisted the administration was in control. But social media told a different story. It wasn't just big cities anymore. Farmers, fisherfolk, and indigenous groups, often neglected in national politics, joined in solidarity. Their message was clear: corruption drowns us all. Artists created protest murals. Poets read verses at rallies. Folk singers revived protest songs from decades past. Culture itself became a weapon, giving the movement soul and memory. Human rights groups and watchdog organizations urged the United Nations and international auditors to investigate misuse of flood funds. The scandal was no longer just a domestic issue, it was global. Rumors emerged of tension inside the armed forces. Some officers sympathized with the protesters, while others vowed loyalty to the government. For many Filipinos, This was a dangerous and uncertain moment. Every weekend, rallies swelled. Protesters filled highways, plazas, and government buildings. Police struggled to contain them. Manila became the heartbeat of a nationwide movement. Now, the Philippines stands on the edge of history. The people are united, the government is cornered, and the world is watching. Will the cries for justice topple the walls of corruption? Or will the floodwaters of betrayal drown another generation's hopes? The answer lies in the days ahead, in the courage of the people, and in the choices of their leaders. The story is far from over. In our next video, we'll dive into the possible outcomes, from reform and accountability to political collapse, or even a new people's revolution. Don't miss it. Subscribe and stay with us as we continue uncovering the truth behind the protests in the Philippines.